dear viewers, today we have with us Miss Neera Maini Srivastava. She's a children's author, a screenwriter, also a mindfulness coach. And she recently came out with a sixth book, Hack The Boredom Code. And as the name suggests, the book is about how one can overcome boredom. Welcome, Neera.
Hi, happy to be here.
Yeah.
So, do you want me to talk about my book? Uh,
Yeah.
let Yeah,
Before we begin that, we would
yeah.
like to know a little more about yourself, like where were you born and brought up, your education, your parents.
Okay, okay. So basically, I'm of course born and brought up in Mumbai. I did all my education here. My
Mhm.
dad was from advertising and also films. He directed
Okay.
films and he was in advertising, I think, from at least 25 years. My mom
Okay.
was an educator. Of
Hmm.
course, now she is retired, but
Hmm.
both of them have always also had that creative streak in them. Uh,
Hmm.
so that's about it. And my sister is, of course, into fashion, and she's also editor, and she's a luxury educator. So that's
Okay.
really the mix of a family.
Hmm.
And my husband is comes from the beauty space. He's the CEO of international beauty brands, and he's been in that space for long. So that's pretty much, in a nutshell, a small family.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
I started my education, academic education, with taking literature in college because I was always attracted to writing in and language. So I kind of that made me choose literature as a subject in college,
Hmm.
and I also
Hmm.
went on to then do my masters in
Hmm.
literature. uh, and I
Hmm.
think and I think immediately, I think after my masters, I wanted to join advertising because it was fascinating. Also, my dad being in advertising, I kind of knew a little bit about it. So I said, why not? Let's explore that. Yeah. So I joined advertising as a trainee writer. Yeah, and then went on to becoming a creative director and all of that, and somewhere in between. And then I also you know tried many other creative platforms in a creative
Hmm.
capacity, animation and publishing, and even movie production, as a creative head. And I think somewhere along there was a story that just popped up, and that became my first book, which was called The White Crow. The
Okay.
White Crow was an allegorical fiction which I
Hmm.
wrote. That was my first book, which went on to become, syllabus in a
Okay.
reputed school. Yeah, it was
Okay.
fiction, but because it kind of embraced human values, it was chosen
Hmm.
as a curriculum.
Hmm.
That was my first book, and then the second happened, and the third happened. And well-being has always been, I think the core of my being, right? So
Hmm.
I learned many modalities, had many experiences with a lot of enlightened
So
masters.
let me interject you there. So
Yeah,
we'll go back to your writing. Like you said that you were always steered towards writing and all. So while growing up in your school and later in your college, uh, did you write like we have school magazines and college magazines? Did you contribute towards that? I want to know like this one, White Elephant, you said?
White Crow, White Crow.
White Crow, sorry. So White Crow was your first book, but
Yes.
which was your first writer? Maybe in school?
Writing. I used to write
Uh,
poetry for sure.
okay,
I would
okay.
just kind of scribble things, and that
Mm-hmm,
was my tryst with writing. So
mm-hmm,
poetry, yes. I would write
okay.
poetry, and just how one writes poetry, and just keep it aside, just for
Mm-hmm,
yourself, right? It's your own creative
mm-hmm,
expression. You're not writing
okay.
for a reason or
Mm-hmm,
a purpose. So yeah, that
okay,
was my first. Yeah.
okay. So when did the White Crow come? Which year was that? And
I think
also tell us how was your experience with the publisher?
So the White Crow, I think it was somewhere in, if I remember, 2009. uh,
Okay.
I published it. I wrote it, and it's interesting because that was my first book, and I
Mm-hmm.
had no intention of even publishing it. It's just that
Okay.
that story was, I just wanted to write that story, and the
Mm-hmm.
journey of writing it was so amazing. It was extremely joyful. So I was,
Mm-hmm.
and I had fun with it. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, when I completed it, I said, okay, let's see if somebody would like to
Mm-hmm.
publish it. So I was coming from that
Mm-hmm.
space, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
wrote to a couple of publishers, and one of them, I mean, they really liked the story and the uniqueness of it, and they decided to kind of go ahead with publishing. So it wasn't so much of a struggle, uh,
Mm-hmm.
primarily also because there wasn't this charge on me that I have to get it published, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that pressure was off, you know.
So you would have been okay with it not being published as well. Normally, an author, like it comes from
Uh,
within that now that
yeah,
you've written
but
a book, a
yeah,
story.
I guess because it was my first book, so I also wasn't
Mm-hmm.
sure that, is it like really worth publishing? Yes, I've
Okay.
enjoyed the process, but it's
Mm-hmm.
okay. So because it being my first, I didn't have that kind of
Mm-hmm.
a path, right? It's only
Mm-hmm.
later that it got structured in my mind. So that's how it
Okay.
happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And at that time, you were still working with advertising?
Yes, yes. In fact,
Okay.
I was in between. We left for Dubai,
Mhm.
and I think it was one of those in between transitionary period.
Okay.
That was when I
Okay.
actually published it, and I came. In fact,
Mhm.
I launched it in Dubai as
Mhm.
well,
Okay.
at
Okay. And
Borders.
you,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. So now this Hack the Boredom Code is your sixth book.
Yes, yes.
This is some sort of realism is there, no?
It's a
The book is a
non-fiction.
factual book.
It's a
Yeah.
non-fiction title.
Mm.
It's my second
Mhm.
non-fiction title. The
Okay.
first being 150 Brilliant Ideas to Keep Young Minds Fit and Fine. That was
Yeah.
again on mental health. That was one of the first books on mental health for
Mm.
young adults. Uh,
Yeah.
and this was my second one,
Mm.
which is in the non-fiction area.
So how is it writing a fiction and then switching over to non-fiction? Which one do you find interesting, and which one do you find easier also?
Actually, honestly, I think both are exciting, and
Hmm.
both are so peculiar, right? Both genres are very, very different, and yet
Hmm.
very exciting. So I can't like really pick between the two. Uh, it
Hmm.
depends on whatever wants to come out as my expression.
Okay. It's not that you enjoy this one more and this one less.
No, 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 no. I enjoy
Mm.
writing and I enjoy expression. So, whatever
Mhm.
form it takes.
Okay. So how do you get, as a writer, like how do you get an idea that this is the idea I want to write? What's the process?
Um, Actually, honestly, there is no process. Uh,
Hmm.
it is something that you get inspired by, right? And
It
inspiration
just
can
pops in
come.
your mind?
Yes, inspiration can come from anywhere at any moment, and it just comes unannounced.
Mm.
It's always like that. So it's a
Mm.
spontaneous emergence of an idea, and ideas can
Mhm.
never be. You can't structure a process of an idea. It just happens.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Now you tell us about Hack the Boredom Code. Like, when did you think of this idea? When did this idea come to you? And how much
So,
time did you take to
yeah. So
write it
actually,
cover to cover?
yeah. So actually, the inspiration for Hack the Bottom Code came to me during the pandemic. Uh,
Okay.
when actually all of us were completely, plunged into a whole new world order, right? Our lives were completely transformed, something that we had never
Mhm.
experienced on every
Yeah.
level, physical, mental, emotional. right? Everything went through a paradigm shift. Uh, and the one thing that, and that there was a sense of monotony that had set in, apart from a lot of despair and loss to a lot of people,
Mhm.
financially, loss of life and all of that, right? And somewhere along, I think once that monotony had set in during the lockdowns, uh, there was only one thing that I heard everyone say was, I am
Mhm.
bored. And when I
Mhm.
kept hearing that, I think that itself kind of was a calling,
Mhm.
to really address this. And I said, okay,
Mhm.
that's interesting, because of course I am bored too. So
Mhm.
what do we do with this? Okay. uh,
Mhm.
it's a life condition, right? And it's seeming to become more and more prominent. Yeah. So I said,
Mhm.
what can we do about it? How can we address it interestingly, and more importantly, in a very productive way? uh, and I
Mhm.
because I did see a lot of people plunging into a depressive state, a low
Depression.
life
Yeah.
state, anxiety.
Mhm.
And I said, what if we could really flip this, to a more
Mhm.
positive, slant, and maybe add value to our lives, and that's
Mhm.
really the germ of the inspiration. And that's when I
Okay.
actually sat down to, uh, just structure the book, do a little bit of research, dip into my own life, and see if there are
Okay.
any gems, which I remember from my own experiences, from certain learned people that I have come across. So that's how the
Mhm.
process began. I began to put down the ideas for the book, and talk to a lot of people. Yeah.
Just coming to that, did you speak to the mental health professionals also?
Yes, I spoke to
Mhm.
doctors. I spoke to counselors. I spoke
Mhm.
to a lot of what I would say spiritual leaders.
Okay.
To get their insights as well, and a lot of just the general audience, which is the younger kids, even older people, right? So it was like a complete. A huge, uh, I would say, a huge audience. Though I had imagined it would be for young adults, but I think it ended up being something that even adults enjoyed.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they could resonate with.
So, what is it with the mental health? This is your second book on mental health,
Yes.
addressing the mental health. So, what is your, I would say, what is your compulsion to write about mental health? There are lots of other issues as well. Why do
I
you
think
tend towards writing mental health?
So I think my own journey, like I said, I was
Mm-hmm.
always drawn to, personal growth as an area
Okay.
of
Mm-hmm.
development, right? Human development. So that has always kind of attracted me, and I ended
Mm-hmm.
up doing, educating myself a lot in that area. So it was a personal passion too, right? To
Okay.
understand, discover what life is about, certain philosophical take, and really understanding what human life is all about beyond our careers and professions, and you know all our accumulation of wealth or fame or whatever. There's something beyond that, and what is that? So that seeking, I think, has been with me, since long, since I was a young adult, I think. you know
I notice a spiritualist there. Are you into spiritualism?
yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So, do you practice?
So
Tell
yeah,
us a
I
little
have.
more about it.
Yeah, so I have, my first, I think, interface with spirituality was a modality which is called Reiki, which is very popularly known.
Yeah.
So I
Mhm.
learned Reiki, and I did my master's in that. And
Okay.
then I learned transcendental meditation, which was
Okay.
so popularized in the West, right? If you
Mhm.
remember the
Mhm.
Beatles, right? They popularized,
Mhm. Yeah.
TM, which was, very
Mhm.
popularly called TM.
Mhm.
So Maharshi Mahesh Yogis, right? So I
Yeah.
learned TM. I've been practicing meditation for many years, uh,
Okay.
Buddhism happened, and a lot more of modalities happened. And I kept kind of picking up and learning and imbibing whatever was,
Mm,
necessary, whatever I
mhm,
felt added value. So it's been a really
mhm,
long journey, but I think
mhm,
mindfulness, if I were to say, has really been the
mhm,
core of my journey. Of course, the tools
mhm,
have been different, uh,
mhm,
but it's ultimately just comes back to mindfulness, right? That
mhm.
awareness. uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
All spiritualism comes back to mindfulness.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
you know
Mhm.
yeah,
So,
you may
so you
practice
are a
different
mindfulness.
methods.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So I said the methods and tools may be very,
Mhm,
very different, but it's
mhm.
ultimately leads to the same destination, right?
Yeah, yeah. So you're a mindfulness coach also.
Yes, yes,
Tell us
yes.
about that. Do you hold sessions
So I
with?
do one-on-one
Mhm.
sessions. I have also
Okay.
done a group session for NMIMS, the faculty, uh,
Okay.
where they had invited me to kind of just do a session. So I've
Mm-hmm.
done a session for groups as well,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I really I'm more in favor of one-on-ones,
Okay.
because every energy is different and it's at a different level of challenges and evolution, right? Uh, because each one's history is also different. Your
Yeah.
personal history is different. What you're going through
Mm-hmm.
is different. So I I like doing one-on-one, mindfulness
Okay.
sessions. Yeah.
Okay. So which age group connects with you more? Like
I think
regarding the. Mm,
the younger lot,
okay.
I just seem to connect
Uh,
very well with them. Uh, Also
okay.
because I think, that sense of judgment is not there so much. So I guess they
Mm,
also then become more open, right? Uh,
mm,
to you. I remember doing this. I was on an author visit to a school, and
mm-hmm.
they had invited me to just talk about my books. And I started the
Mm-hmm.
session with, okay, these are my books, but I didn't want to kind of dwell only on that. And I said, how can I make it
Mm-hmm.
interesting for them, right? Adding value
Mm-hmm.
to them. Uh, and I kind of did a very impromptu writing,
Mm-hmm.
or more about, I think, maybe thinking session with them on
Mm-hmm.
imagination and creativity. And I
Mm-hmm.
opened the whole session with, you're not going to be judged on this, so you can just
Mm-hmm.
relax and have fun. And the creativity that just one line unleashed was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they really came up with such brilliant ideas, and because they knew that this is not an exam, or this is not some thing they're going to be marked on, right? So they could just
Mm-hmm.
be themselves. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that is really key in that allowance, allowing people to just be who they want to be, you know without
So
any
since you,
force.
yeah, you work with children, young adults. So, do you think the cases of depression, stress have risen, or is it that they talk about it now? Earlier, they never used to talk about it. What is
No, I
it
think
exactly?
definitely there is an increase.
Hmm.
There's a huge increase, I would say. uh,
Okay.
I mean, what you're saying is also true, that more people are now talking about it. The conversation is
Hmm.
kind of, more
Happening.
audible today.
Hmm.
But definitely, I think the incidences have also increased. And
Okay.
primarily, I feel this whole digital lifestyle, right? So much of reliance on social media being the core,
Mm-hmm.
actually, of these kind of
Life.
challenges. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that is definitely responsible, and it has really taken mental health to a different level,
Mm-hmm.
because
So,
approval and validation have become so important to the younger adults. you know
mm. So what do you do with them? How do you advise them? How do you tell younger children to go about it? How to keep themselves sane and away from social media? It's
So
something which
one,
is like,
yeah. So one is definitely, get offline. Firstly,
mhm,
do more of activities which are offline, even if it is meeting your
mhm,
friends, just meet them
mhm,
outside, interact with nature, go for treks, go for all those kind of activities which take you outside, right, with actually enhance your interaction with the environment, right?
mhm.
That itself is, it's a very small basic kind of tool, but it works miraculously because suddenly your mind opens up in a different way, right? You begin to use all your senses, which are actually under lock and key when you are only, spending time online and, yeah, doing all those
Yeah.
things, right?
So would you like to share any like any interesting story, any success story, maybe among from the children uh, who changed?
Yeah, definitely. So I remember I remember a young girl, who came to me and she said, I'm going through these. I mean, of course, her mother kind of contacted me that maybe you'd like to have a chat with her. And I said, yeah,
Mhm,
definitely. I'm not a therapist or anything, but
mhm,
maybe a conversation would help, right?
mhm,
uh,
mhm.
and I chatted with her and I kind of got to know that her what she was going through, her anxiety was actually rooted in uh, her body image. She was going through
Okay.
a lot of issues with her own body image,
Mhm,
constantly because, her peers, and there was a pressure to look a certain way, and, to constantly upload pictures of yourself, which are like, yeah, unreal almost, right? And I think that pressure had really got to her to the extent that she
mhm.
had started questioning her own self worth, you know,
Okay.
and her own sense of, am I even worth looking at? So that
Okay.
kind of body image issue was
Mhm,
something that, you know, came across in the conversation, and I think
mhm.
I just kind of made her see somehow the beauty in her, which
Okay.
she was unable to see, right? And we
Mhm,
got talking and I kind of, made her see that, you have so much that you are just overlooking, you know
mhm,
just beyond this picture you are so much
mhm,
bigger, and
mhm,
you're not even looking at that. So embrace all of that, and
mhm,
automatically you will start to feel beautiful. Beauty is not a external code, right? Which
mhm.
is, your body in a certain way, your skin color in a certain way. It is about how you feel about yourself. So that whole
Yeah.
igniting, that self love was such a simple thing, but that
Mhm,
actually did it, and she
mhm.
started. I mean, she was not on any counseling sessions, nothing. Just that conversation, I think, made her see who she really is. And from then on, it was just, I mean, I almost saw her blossoming into something totally different, you know and that's when it kind of she was free of that, right? And then the anxiety and all just kind of frittered away. So yeah, that I will always remember that one,
Mm.
instance.
And it always gives you also a lot of satisfaction, and then feeling that you are on the path, the right path.
Absolutely, absolutely, because I mean, making a little difference, I think it just
Someone
makes
else's
you
life.
feel fulfilled. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we'll go back to the writing part. Nowadays, many people are self-publishing their books, and they are also very happy about doing it.
Right.
So, what are your views on that? We would like to know. Do you think a big publishing house matters, or self-publishing is good enough?
See, it's a very tricky question because I also don't want to be judgmental of people who've done that. And a lot of uh,
Mhm,
today well known writers, I think, began with that. Uh, so I think it's a very individual path. But for
mhm,
me, I think it was, I always wanted to go for the traditional publishing. Also because I wanted to maintain a certain quality, which I felt, publishers are at a certain level to even evaluate, right? one is
Mhm.
you thinking your work is great, right? But
Yeah.
one is somebody who is probably more experienced and more qualified.
Yeah.
When you get that verdict from that person, then I think you also learn, right? So I felt, I mean, I've always been
Mhm.
drawn to the traditional publishing.
Okay.
Also, you get certain feedback that then you incorporate also in your writing,
Mhm.
and so it's a
It
nice
improves the
learning.
copy.
Absolutely, it's a nice learning
Uh,
process as well, right?
mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise you're just on
So,
an island. Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's right. So you said that you also did movie productions. Do you still do that?
No, no. I was working in a movie production
Acha.
house as a creative
Okay.
head. So I was handling movies
Okay.
as brands. So from the
Okay.
communication space, yeah. And I also
Okay. Okay.
have written an animation feature script
Acha.
uh, for
Okay.
yeah, studio, yeah, which is in production right now. Yeah.
Mind telling us name of that?
It was called Poles Apart.
Okay.
Uh, So
And
it was an interesting animation feature that I had written, and I
mm-hmm,
think I also wrote the sequel. But it's kind of
mm-hmm,
gone in production. It's dead since
mm-hmm.
very long, uh,
Acha.
going through some production glitches. Yeah, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So now you are a full-time writer.
So I work for an ad agency. I'm
Okay.
consulting creative director to an agency. But yes, I
Mm-hmm,
continue to write my own,
mm-hmm,
titles and all of that because I
mm-hmm.
love doing that. So that
How do
doesn't
you
stop.
find time to write with your
Uh,
full-time work?
I think I do manage to snatch away some time because I think
Mm,
you reach a certain stage where if you don't write, you feel miserable. So
mm,
So, it kind of keeps compelling you to write, even if it's a
mm,
little, but keep writing
mm.
every day. Yeah.
You maintain a schedule?
Yes, if I'm writing a book, I
Mhm,
definitely have a timeline, I have a structure to it. Because
mhm,
unstructured writing doesn't really go anywhere. If I'm writing a
mhm,
book, it can go on for, 7 years, or it can finish in
mhm,
2 months, right? So
mhm,
it's important to put that structure and a timeline to yourself. you know.
mhm.
Uh,
No, no, daily
yeah.
writing schedule. Do you maintain a daily writing schedule?
I try to. Uh,
Mhm.
at least,
You
even
have.
if I can write a page every day, I prefer doing
Mhm,
that because then that
mhm.
rhythm continues.
Okay. Now we'll
Yeah.
move to. Are you writing, coming up with another book?
Yes, I am thinking of it's still in my thought process, but there's another
Okay.
fiction novel that I've been working on since some time, so I intend to
Okay.
complete that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now we'll move towards a little lighter questions. Who's your favorite author?
My favorite author is actually recently I have discovered
Mhm.
Elif Shafak. She's a
Okay.
Turkish writer,
Mhm.
and I've recently read her books, and I've just been floored by her.
Okay.
So currently, yes, I mean you can think of a lot of authors, but currently I think she's
Mhm.
my favorite.
Okay. And your favorite book?
My favorite book is I think The Alchemist.
Acha.
It's my all-time
Why?
favorite.
Why?
I think because it is so simple
Mhm.
and it's so profound, you know,
Mhm.
and it's a beautiful, simple story which I think anyone can connect with. You know,
Mhm.
it, despite it transcends geography, it transcends races, cultures. It's a human story, right? So I
Mhm.
love that.
Okay. So, what kind of books are you generally steered towards? What kind of topics interest you when you pick up a book for reading?
Okay. Uh, I think for me, fantasy holds my
Mhm.
interest a lot. Uh,
Mhm.
Magic, fantasy, human relationships, definitely. Uh,
Mhm.
I think these three, and a lot of inner discovery, inner journey, which is either fiction or non-fiction. Those kind of books really interest me. I'm kind of drawn to.
And okay. And how much of reading contributes towards better a person becoming a better writer? Do you think
Huge,
so?
huge.
Hmm.
I would
Hmm.
say, like, uh,
Hmm.
I cannot overstate that because
Hmm.
I learned this from my script writing teacher, who actually
Hmm.
told us input
Hmm.
is equal to output.
Okay.
And that is 100% true. The more
Hmm.
you read, the more you can write.
Hmm.
It just
So
feeds
can
that writer in you.
I want you to explain more on to talk more on that.
So,
How reading helps?
so what happens is when you're reading another mind, right, another piece of work, uh, your mind is actually fed with different ideas, right? Uh, Different ways of expression. One is craft, and one is the idea, the story.
Mm-hmm.
The characters, the plot, the imagination, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
confronting a whole new universe of creativity, which is
Mm-hmm.
coming from some other mind, right? And it actually makes you stop and relish and also think. It definitely provokes you to think, whatever it may be, right? So your thinking is stimulated in a huge way, you know. And I'm not saying that, to emulate another author, right? Uh, but it just kind of feeds your mind, uh, and it enriches it, and so I feel that is important for a writer. Otherwise you can't be in isolation, and uh, you can write, of course, but I think it's richer, when you've read so much more. you There's so
Mm-hmm.
much more that's gone into you, and then the creative product comes out of you, right? uh, so yeah, I
Okay. What is one advice which you would, or one advice or one suggestion you would want to give to an upcoming author, somebody who wants to write
uh,
his or her first book, but is doesn't know where to start?
so I would just say, write without judgment, you know
Mm,
and don't have that pressure of,
mm,
will I get a publisher or not. That is a
mm,
later stage. Don't even allow
mm,
that to get into you when you're in the process of writing. And
mm,
keep writing and rewriting. We
mm,
sometimes, when I think your first piece of writing, one tends to, and this I learned from my creative director, please do not fall in
mm.
love with your writing. uh,
Okay.
have the openness to even see it critically. you know
Mm,
get feedback from people that you kind of respect and regard, right? And
mm,
be open to that.
mm,
Of course, while you're in the process of writing, don't kind of judge your work, that is it good enough, or all those doubts will not lead to great writing. So initially, just, I think, allow your writing to just flow, and then take a critical viewpoint.
Who- from whom do you take critical viewpoint for your books?
So I think my first is my family,
Mhm,
uh, right? And of course, some dear friends who, some are authors themselves. So I do consider, their opinion as well. And interestingly, for Hack the Boredom Code, when I kind of published it, and I was very keen to get the feedback from a young adult, who has read it, and you know, and I was very keen to know how it was received by a young adult. So that to me
mhm,
was fabulous, because their feedback,
mhm.
yeah, so that their feedback and reactions are immensely valuable, because that's the audience you're
Okay.
writing for, right? So
Mhm,
for me, it's amazing, and sometimes they tell you things that even you've never thought of. while writing. So that's interesting. Yeah,
But
very
what if
interesting.
your book is trashed? You show your writing piece to somebody in your family on that before you go ahead with publishing it. And suppose it is trashed by them. How does it
So
impact you?
if I believe in my work, I would continue to.
Mm,
I may see
okay.
and evaluate if there's something that I can take positively out of it to better the work.
Mhm.
But if I, overall believe in my work, I don't think I will let that affect my journey,
Okay. Okay. Okay.
because that
So
happens
as
with
we
a
come,
lot of authors. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I once somebody told me that there are no bad books. Only there are
absolutely,
different audiences for different kinds of books. So you can't say a book is bad book.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Neera, as we come to an end of this session, we want you to tell us what do you do other than your advertising and your writing? What are your favorite
So
pastimes?
I love to travel. It's one of my greatest
Mhm,
passions.
mhm.
Some of my books I've actually written in coffee shops because it's
Okay.
so interesting in different countries, and you know observing different people and
Mhm,
cultures. So for me, traveling and knowing more
mhm.
cultures and more people is fascinating. For me, it's a
Okay.
fascinating human journey. So
Okay.
that is one, and I'm extremely passionate and fond of pets. So they
Okay.
kind of grab my interest and love. So
Mhm.
I do have a
How
pet,
many?
and
Huh.
yeah,
How many do you have?
I have one. I mean, this is our second
Okay.
one. But
Okay.
yeah, I think that connect with a pet is something
Mm.
totally different. Yeah, but I think travel being one of my greatest passions. Yeah.
So, thank you so much for talking to us. And
Thank you.
we wish you all the best with your next book, for your travels, for
Thank
your
you.
mental health sessions, and for your coaching to the young kids on mental health. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.